schools or for children who haven't had any experience with digital maps, because then it will help them do some of the things that the others are going to talk about. So getting started with the digital maps. My examples are all drawn on Sheffield because that's where we are at the moment. So which software, which website should I use? I'm not going to tell you which one to use. There are a range that you can choose from. Google Maps, they all do the same sort of thing in a slightly different way. So Google Maps, Google obviously. Big Maps is from Microsoft, it's the one I always tend to use. Obviously the previous one shows an ordinary street map, that shows more of an aerial view. OpenStreetMap from ArcGIS. Yep. Once again, the street map, but slightly different. And ArcGIS as well. Once again, showing an aerial view with the streets labelled. Oh, one I heard about yesterday after I've done the presentation, National Library of Scotland maps, which I don't know, but I'm going to explore that one. We're not just using the maps, obviously, for the sake of it, or the mapping for the sake of it. It's in the national curriculum, using a range of sources of information, including maps, aerial photographs, and GIS. It's in the subject content, looking at similarities and differences, human physical geography of a small area for Key Stage 1, or a region of the UK at Key Stage 2. It's in the skills and fieldwork section of the national curriculum, and in the new GEO framework, learning about data and digitisation in a digital world. So, get the children playing with whichever one you're going to choose, searching for their own school, searching for their home postcode. They all have a search facility. They'll be slightly different, usually with the old magnifying glass. So put in a postcode, put in a place name. Can they find their home, the school, where Granny lives, where they're going on holiday, whatever it is? Can they find a place in the news, holiday place in a storybook? Can they find that? They probably won't. Why can't they? Somewhere that they're learning in elsewhere in geography. Critically, get them zooming in and out, looking at the different scales. And they'll be fascinated with it, having a play, as well as zooming in and out, scanning, moving the maps around as well. Different layers, and each of them have different layers built in. Streets, street views, with or without, the aerial views with or without the names, the street names and so on. Whether they want to cycle, looking at the traffic, using measuring tools if they've got a measuring tool. Can they print them? Can they save them? All that sort of thing. This is a school in Sheffield with various layers around that school. So we've got the school in the middle there. Things not working. There it is. Same view, an aerial view. Looking at the similarities, looking at the features, looking at the differences. Can they describe that location? It might not be the school, it might be somewhere else, might be a contrasting locality. With a few other places marked on. Zooming out now, so we've still got the school in the centre, but we're zooming out to see more of the region. Now we've got Sheffield set in its regional locality. Thank you very much. Oh, one further thing. This one I would recommend you buy. I haven't included it before because it's a purchasable one. Your primary schools might not want to buy it, but Digimap is absolutely perfect because it's designed for school use, for children to use. Go downstairs, stand 48 and 49 and touch Digimap from OS. Thank you.
We've created online webinars to go with it.
So community analyst, and actually, I'm actually going to show very briefly as well multiple deprivation. So I think when we get ArcGIS, quite often we forget that these are the tools available. So clicking on the waffle at the top, you've got all these extra tools, and these are, I own these most at the A level and for changing places, but you can use other things with them. I'm just kind of going to briefly go over. So this one's really good. You can change the base map on it so you can see, you can zoom in and out, but it just gives you the top 10 most deprived, top 10 least deprived areas of the UK, the lowest deprived areas. I sat there when I looked at it the other day and I'd forgotten all about it. And I was just checking out. I thought, oh, that one there, I didn't realise that. And I zoomed in, I looked and it went, oh, actually, that's right next to where I live. It's the next super output area over. So it just gives you an idea. Obviously, you can zoom around, but it gives you, if you're looking at places, changing places, and you're looking at all that population data, really good visual just to start with. But community analysts, now I think people get scared because you look at community analysts and I forget about it because it was shown to me about 3 years ago and then I forgot. And it was only recently I came back to it and realised how useful it was. But it's scary because the first thing you've got to do is create a project. And you have to give it a name and it looks like it's going to be something you're going to break and obviously you can start again. So you create a project, give it a name, and then you literally put in where you want to go, so your site. So if I'm looking at changing places, I look at our school, so I find a school and I put the pin in for the school, and it then allows you, once you've created your site, you then have this option to do rings. So this one is kilometres or the distance, you can do drive times and you can do walk times. Now, for our purposes, I'll just give you a background here. Maidstone's actually on 3 postcode areas, so it's really hard to compare if you're comparing to other sources, because I have to look at ME14, ME15 and ME16, and they don't just cover Maidstone, of course, because it's 3 postcodes that all congregate in the middle. One comes out this way, one goes that way, one goes that way, and it takes in all the lovely villages around the outside, which kind of give you this skew, basically. It kind of like knocks the data out. So it's really hard to compare. We do use that, but this one just allows you to focus more on the school area. So I go for walk time, just, going to school, mostly we're looking at walks, and I look at 15 and 30 and 45 minute walks. You'll notice that we've got this bit here. We're actually in the middle of 2 railway lines, so the only way in and out of the school is over 1 railway line bridge. So we are the students have to kind of come all the way around, so that's why we've got that. You can also see the river, the access to the river problem creates as well. But once you've applied that, this is where it gets really powerful. There's this infographics option, really nice and easy. So if I click on it, that's my first infographic, okay? A 0 to 15 minute walk, that tells me population, household, the per capita purchasing index, how many households and their average size, and their purchasing power, their capital purchasing power. So it just gives you a brief overview of the area. I can then, at the top there, where it says 0 to 15, there's a drop down. I can then click on that and I can see the 30, which gives us a bit of a comparison again. And then the 30 to 45 minutes. And you can do this, you can put in multiple sites, multiple locations. Of course, if you decide that you've made it too big, you can start a new project, you can start again. But it just gives you that basic idea. Now, it's really good for using with A level, but actually just showing this is really useful if you're doing things with GCSE and even lower school. You can just show bits like this on the board. If you want your own students access, I would say, as when you're creating their account, you have to give them the access separately, because that confused me at first. But it allows, for your own A-level students, I use it with, they can create their own. For lower school, you can actually just show that. The other thing you can do is build reports. So this one, this is where I said about postcodes being a bit more complicated. So here's the school, but what you can do here is where it says add sites, there's actually an option for neighbouring sites. So I've literally selected 3 of the next postcode along. And it just gives you an idea of the neighbour, and I could have selected any, I could have looked at other places too. And this one is an age comparison, but it does also allow you, there's a drop down here, and you can create all sorts of information. You can just use what you need. And again, so this is giving us the ages, it gives you an idea of the demographics in this case. So quite an elderly population for this one, not so much in other areas. Now, because I do it with changing places, we tend to compare it with Margate. Quite nice because we can get to Margate, but it's far enough away that they don't know where Margate is. So I've now got 2 site locations. I've got 2 sites added to my map. I've selected them. You can see them at the top there. You can click to select them. And you can see over here that I've got Hartsdown and Mapleston Note. So I've gone for Hartsdown Academy. It's the school in the middle of Margate. And you can see there it says run side by side for all. If you click on that, you get that. Okay, which is quite a lot of data. But if you hover over them, it tells you what all this data means. Those 3 dots at the top, you can click on that, you can delete sites. So if I only want to compare them for 15 minutes, I can delete all the other sites and it gives me a better comparison. But it just means it gives you that starting point for data. You're not having to collect the data, it's actually already there for you, which is really useful. It's just really interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Hello, my name is Alistair Hammil, head of geography in Learning College, and we're going to take a quick look here at how we can use satellite data, secondary data, to help forecast some volcanic eruptions. I'm going to give you a particular example of something that I did with my A-level students just very recently, based on Mount Semeru in Indonesia. Semeru earlier on this year was looking like it was about to erupt, and some of the remote sensing GPS data that was being pulled out from it indicated that it was expanding at an incredible rate of about 2 centimeters per day. We will know that that's likely indicating there's magma building inside, and an eruption could be possible, but as I said, my pupils forecasting volcanoes is like the sneeze that doesn't come. Will this actually erupt or will it not? Well, we don't know. But in near real time, what is very, very important is that we get as much data in as possible in order to prepare for the possibility, including looking at whether or not you're going to be asking for evacuations to take place. So I got my students to use Sentinel Hub. So these were some of the instructions that I got them to use. EO browser, it's very, very straightforward and easy to use. That's simply the set of instructions that I gave them. I would say that that's no more difficult than teaching somebody the procedural knowledge that go into producing a hand-drawn choropleth map. Yes, there is some procedural knowledge, but the way this interface is set up is pretty simple. I got them to try this out, first of all, using Kilauea and produce these animated GIFs using some false color images to track where the lava flow went from the 2019 eruption. That was really just introduce them to the sense that we can travel anywhere in the world using this remote census data to find out important information. So back to Semeru then. I gave them a little bit of context of Semeru. It had erupted the year before, and the eruption had gone down one particular part of the crater, and it created a little bit of a gap there. So it was getting them to forecast where the eruption might manifest itself if it did erupt again. It gave them a series of instructions to follow there, including the one down at the bottom, as you can see, posing the question, if there's already a gap in the crater wall thanks to the previous eruption, if a pyroclastic flow happens, is it more likely to happen there? In theory, it could go down a radial pattern in any one of the valleys, but is that more likely? Their instruction were, because evacuation is not cost neutral, as many as I have to, but no more than I need to. And I said to them afterwards, we're going to appear in front of the press. I'm going to be like the politician handing over to my scientific expert, and you're getting the blame. Because that's the way it works, isn't it? So I got them all to have a go. These are all individual slides that the pupils produced themselves to come up with their own evacuations. I had told them whenever I was saying that evacuation is not cost neutral when you're living in some of these areas where a cow is an incredibly important economic asset. For you to leave that behind is leaving your livelihood behind. So some of them thought as part of the evacuation, they'll airlift the cows out as well. And I gave them a little bit of an introduction to Semeru and the context of it here using the GIS map. I was able to bring in this information, which set a little bit of the overview for them and just let them know where it's in. I think GIS maps and scale are a really, really useful way of doing that. And this is our true color image. I was able to bring in some of the false color images that would allow them to see even better the previous eruption. So whenever this comes on, this is the infrared false color one, and you can see very much the lahars and the pyroclastic flows where they have gone. And if we zoom in towards the top of the last eruption, there is the bit of the crater wall that was broken down by the previous eruption. The question I posed, is that the likely route for pyroclastic density current if there is an eruption this time? So that was the Thursday. Lo and behold, that very weekend didn't Semeru erupt. Thankfully, nobody was killed. Important to say that, although the impacts on people there weren't still considerable. And we were able to come in the very next day, on the Monday, and say, right, let's take a look at the images that we can get. How do we get this up-to-date imagery from the other side of the world when it has literally just happened? Well, you go back into Sentinel Hub. That's landside imagery there. There is the pyroclastic density current actually going down. There is the thermal image showing the heat of it. Our pupils were able to go in and analyze that data and then bring it into the comparison of, right, how accurate were their forecasts? How accurate were their forecasts? They came back in again, and these are all of their individual forecasts. This is one of my students. This is what he had produced on the Thursday. This was his analysis based on the previous eruption, where it was likely to go. He was able to bring in near real time the satellite data from the weekend when the eruption happened and compare and contrast. Had he got it right? Yeah. He's definitely getting his bonus this year. Thank you.
Right, Jo is a member of our group but can't make it because she's in Germany, unfortunately. So I'm just going to share this as her bright idea, but I was amazed when I saw it. I hadn't seen it before. So I don't know whether you know, but we're using Excel. You can make a very quick choropleth map. So the rationale really was that she wanted her year 9 to make sure that they understood development, didn't spend their whole time colouring in the maps, making the coloured shades, making sure it all looked nice, because what it takes. I'm a little bit sexist here when I say the girls colour in across and it takes the whole lesson, but they haven't even analysed it. So that's where it all comes from. So she uses this. So it's really easy to do. How do you do it? You've got your countries, and what you need is the data to be geo-referenced. In the same this case, it was sufficient. So you can do it by countries across the world. But in the CIA fact book, where this comes from, you can also do the breakdown of a country. There are different levels that you can use. So for her students, she gave them only 20 countries and 3 indicators, as you can see across on the Excel spreadsheet. And she took it from the CIA World Fact Book. And they made a simple table in Excel, which can then be set up beforehand, and then you can make your choropleth map very quickly. So after you've collected the data, you shade in the area of the table that you need for the countries, as you can see there with the grey. You then need to click on the insert, and if you look up here, you'll see that there's a little globe picture. And if you click on that, it's very simple. You then get your choropleth map. I was actually blown away by this. It's so simple, and I'm thinking, why didn't I know this before? And I haven't shared this with my trainees, but I certainly will be now, because it's just so simple. So I played myself, and it was as simple as it looks. So if you want some more different types of data, then there is a whole different categories. For example, here you've got infant mortality rate. And again, you can save to save time typing the data out, you've actually got the data there ready for you. So have a play and look, and you will be amazed. Honestly, it's the click of a button, and you've got your choropleth map. How good is that? So here is the one of the infant mortality. I just couldn't believe it personally. I was blown away. All these complicated things that we do, but actually this is very simple.
Yeah, just go.
Okay, so what you'll find is that when your Excel spreadsheet, it says here insert. And when you click on there, the globe isn't initially there, but it will come up with the picture of the globe. And when the picture of the globe comes up, then that's the tool you use. It looks, because when I saw this at first, I was like, how do I do this? Just have a little play, and it's just like you put a chart in. But instead, there's a globe symbol there now. It wasn't there in the past. Have a go. Honestly, you'll be surprised. And the CIA data as well, because obviously when I'm giving someone else a presentation, I want to make sure I understand it myself. And I just couldn't believe how actually easy it was. So I would suggest, what I did was I actually went to the one she's given us an example, this one here. And I had to play myself with the infant mortality rate. And inside this presentation, I've embedded the link to there. There's a whole load of different indicators. But like any of these things, this means that the kids can concentrate on the actual geography rather than the lovely, pretty shading. So yeah, have a go. And I was a novice. A week ago, I hadn't used this before, and it does work, I can tell you.
Gotcha. Thanks. My name's Rackley. My pronouns are they, she. You can find me at Job Ramblings. Very quick, I'm doing my very short. I'm just going to show you something called native land. It is an absolute must. You must bookmark this. And it gives us a decolonised, accurate picture of the world as it was through First Nation lands, through Indigenous lands, and things like that. And so all I'm going to do just for 60 seconds is just kind of show you this. Is my time up, Alistair? And actually, when I said I would do this, they've actually now come out with version 2 since I would do this. There's actually more on it than there was initially. Initially, it was just the territories. I mean, this is absolutely incredible. So, and it just goes to show how much of their overlap there was. So there, you know, when you look at a modern map of the world, you know, not to come down on Joe's choropleth mapping, but you can now see how inadequate that kind of mapping is, and how what a lot of bias and a lot of colonial bias is in a mapping at the moment. Whereas if you look at something like this, you'll see that all these First Nation lands had so much overlap. You know, and of course there would have been conflict between these groups, as there would be when there's overlapping territories. But on the whole, there was a lot more synergy, a lot more collaboration, a lot more cooperation. So what I tend to do when I'm doing a case study, and I want to challenge everybody to move themselves into the learning zone, the growth zone to do this, is that say if you're going to be doing about maybe the San Andreas or something like that, you need to acknowledge the land that is on. So rather than just saying this is San Francisco, this is California, whatever, you know, try to get into the habit of, this is San Francisco Bay, of saying, for example, you know, that this is, for example, Ohlone native lands, which San Francisco occupies. Okay, we need to get into the habit of doing that. So you can use this for your case studies and that kind of stuff. And this is the bit that they've actually added. I mean, they've now got languages as well, languages and treaties. And I haven't had the chance to look at this, but if I just quickly turn on languages, you can map by languages. You know, they're currently based in Canada, so they've worked on North and South America quite a lot, and now they're working on other places. And you've also got treaties as well, so between lands. So this is the concessions, you know, based on after the age of like the colonizers moved in and they put all these treaties together, and then where, you know, for example, Indian reservations and whatnot. So yeah, that's called native-land, native-land.ca. So definitely check that out. Yep. Yeah, it's very, yes, it is, it's First Nation led, so it's for a coalition of people with an Indigenous background. So therefore, you know, it comes from their own voice. And if you go to About Us, it's like how it works, all their partners, stuff like that, and they give you the complete rundown and methodology of how they put this together. That's a very valid question. Nice one.
speed. And I'm Brendan Conway. I teach geography in Surrey and do various other things. The app I'm going to show you, there's a link to it here. When I clicked just now, it worked, which is nice. And it looks a bit like this. So this is an app I made in ArcGIS Online a few years ago, and I use it quite regularly with students, particularly applicable for GCSE, Key Stage 3, if you're looking at tectonics. It's a very, very useful map because what it does is it actually enables you to kill a few birds with one stone. One thing it does, it helps you to teach what GIS is. This map here is embedded with literally millions and millions of points about the elevation of the Earth's crust, not just the land, the seafloor as well. Also, it enables you to visualize what's going on at plate margins. And the other thing, it helps you to address a misconception. We're always trying to address these misconceptions that students come up with. Has anyone ever taught this and found that the students think that the plates kind of finish at the edge of the land and don't go into the sea, and that somehow or other the oceans aren't part of it? So the way I talk about that is to say, well, the oceans are really like just great big puddles on a very, very, bumpy landscape. So how can we actually show that to them? Well, what you do is you can go to a place where you know there's an interesting plate margin going on, maybe here. We look at South America just here. So this would be a convergent margin, what we sometimes know as in the textbooks. I know it's not strictly true, so maybe destructive. And what you do is you can set up the app to create an elevation profile. Now, as I was at school, maybe when some of you were at school, you used to have to do this meticulously, measuring each little point and then draw a line graph at the end. You can do this relatively straightforwardly here. So if I go to somewhere around Valparaiso, just here, I'm going to ask the app to draw a line like this. I'm going to draw a line roughly like this, double click it, and it will then process all that data and it will produce an elevation profile of what's going on if I'm taking a slice across that plate margin, that convergent plate margin. It can take different amounts of time depending on your internet speed. You can get students to do this, or you can actually produce these as something that they can use later, and you can put this as a little video into a PowerPoint. So you can see it generates the profile. What I can do is then travel along it here, and I can look at certain features. So you can see just there we've got a seamount, and there are always seamounts to look at there. We go a little bit further, we've got the ocean trench. Check out the depth of it here. It says 5,807 meters. So you've got the, this would be the Nazca plate, wouldn't it, I think? Have I got that right? If I haven't, by the way, I can check. Look. Oh, it doesn't say that. But anyway, I've ruined it now. So I'm going to show you one I made earlier. So it's just like Blue Peter, isn't it? So if I go down to, I've gone too far. Go a little further. There we go. So here's one that I made earlier, fortunately. And this is how it's actually used. So this is, I've captured that on video, put it into a GeoGIF, pasted it into the PowerPoint, and then the students can then use that to label it. They can label it from scratch, or you can scaffold the task in various ways. So sometimes I will add, potential labels or annotations they could use, and it's their challenge to actually move them around to the right places, so they can move them so they end up in the right places like that. So you can do that for any part of the world, at any scale. You can create an elevation profile. So this is for convergent margin just here. We can see a similar thing here. This is for a collision margin, another convergent margin. So you've got the Himalayas. You can see how dramatic that change in elevation is. That wall of the Himalayas right there. And we mustn't forget, this is India. Not very mountainous. So a lot of interesting things there. And once again, we can label it. These are potential labels. This is a slightly more advanced one than the one I showed you before. And you can then kind of write answers, so to speak. So that's how that works, and I hope you enjoy using that app when you look at the PowerPoint afterwards. Go ahead. The app's name is, let's go back to show you here. I'm just going to refresh it. So I made this in school. It's World Volcanoes and Tectonic Plates Elevation. There's a splash screen there, and that's how it works. You can just open up the graph like that, click the pen, get it working wherever you like in the world. So I hope that's useful to you, and I use that a lot with GCSE students in particular. You could use that with other students right up to A level as well. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So what I want to show you is working with census data maps. It is amazing. They've actually put all the census data and they're releasing it as we speak at sort of phased, in a phased way, the different census data. And if you're not already watching it and looking at these maps, then I think you need to probably start. It's amazing. There is, if you go to the website, then it shows you all the different types of data that you can choose. And they all link to a lovely map where you just literally key in the type of data you want and you can choose your sources of where you want to do it. So it's literally the click of a button. So if I click this here, it is this quick, I've got the map. And then what we've got here, we choose the topic. So if I just choose population for now, I can choose whichever I like. So I just scroll down and, for example, passports. So is it UK passport? And just at the click of a button, I've got this data, and at the bottom, I've got this amazing little percentage graph, whatever I've chosen. So this is really good because obviously it's whole of England, but if you want to do an NEA or a project in a more local area, then you can also zoom into that area. And as you see down here, the percentages change according to where you are. So if I zoom out again, I think it's really interesting. So I'll choose something else. Maybe you'll look at non-UK passports. And again, you've got the percentages and you can go over the area you're interested in and see what the percentage is. So yeah, really, really exciting stuff. I think that they're doing this. Now, if I go on to my next slide, what we've got here is we've got the idea we can build a custom area profile for yourself. So what you've got is you select the area that you want to, or you can draw your own. So there's different tools at the top. So if you see at the top, you've actually got an arrow, but you've also got a selection of an area you can do, or you can pinpoint it with a circle. So you can put a circle round. So like Heidi was doing with her school, you could easily do a similar sort of thing for this. And then what you do is you choose your data that you want to create the charts for, and then you view your custom data set, and you can download it and move it to an Excel spreadsheet. So a very interesting one, which Brendan particularly highlighted to us recently, is if you look at some places, there's some very interesting population pyramids that can be got out of these profiles, where they've got large student populations, for example. And there'll be other similar ones that are available. So if we're in Sheffield at the moment, which is why I did that. So basically, if we want to, you can literally put in Sheffield. I can spell it. Sorry. Yeah, that's right. There we go. Sheffield. If I click on there, I wanted to show you how absolutely quick it was. I didn't need a screenshot, but I'm always a bit worried about connections. So that's how easy it is. So hopefully, if you're not already using this, then you will have a look at it. I think it's ideal for the NEA particularly, and also other ones. So what I did here was I selected a couple of the census data things that they show. And if you look here, I really like this one. This is the proportion of non-UK born short-term residents. And they've done that with males and females, but they show the difference between 2011 and 2021. So that's got quite nice for changing places and showing what is happening. And the other one I picked out here was this is the highest number of short-term residents. Manchester here is the non-UK born short-term residents. If you go down, we've got Sheffield. So it's quite near the top, but significantly less than Manchester. But as a percentage of the total population, then they can vary significantly. So this allows you a very simple comparison. And I mean, I've just picked out a couple of things. There's a lot more for you to look at. I would suggest that the official, the Office for the National Statistics Follow them on Twitter. I'm not a Twitter person that much, but it's amazing. Every time they release the next set of data, there are links to their latest graphs and their latest things. And there is a whole schedule of which we have not finished yet. There is still more to come. If you've got spare time in your hands, but actually it's quite fun, there are several games with the census data as well. So this one's rather fun, is because you have a daily game or a regular mode. You can choose what you want. You click on the different letters, and you have to make your own path across the board. But it says, is the population bigger or smaller? And so you have to guess. So it goes, say, to Rotherham, to Sheffield, is that bigger or smaller? And as you do that, Wakefield, is it bigger or smaller? And you get whether you get it right or wrong. But it's really good because it starts making you think about the relative places and the names. So you're getting a sense of place by just playing this game, really, because you start thinking, is that built up? Is it countryside? And if you do that with a group of students who then shout out or do it themselves, they absolutely love it. And it can be quite addictive. Another one they've got, which I thought was rather good, is that you can actually look at how your area has changed in 10 years. So if you put your personal postcode in there, I'm not going to, but if you put the Sheffield one in, we'd then see the changes between 2011 and 2021. But also, there's a lovely quiz. So you can choose the area and see how much you actually know about your personal area and how it's changed. And you get little options, and then you get an either right or wrong. So again, it's really personalised to your own school area or to where you're teaching or where you live, etc. So strongly recommend that you try that out.
So, I'm going to finish off with one last idea. Now, Andy Fernald, who's at the back, he did a really good session yesterday about how to start using Survey 123. This is not a fieldwork Survey 123 use. I use it from year 7s, but you could use this for Key Stage 2 even. I think it's a really good idea. What it is, we do, in our school, we're trying to get more student cultural capital into our lessons. We're doing an activity about resources, and food is one of those elements we build in. And this is a little bit of a homework task that uses GIS to enable, so it's a tool to collect the information and also then to analyse the information in a different ways. So this the idea came from actually Esri a couple of years ago, Esri US did a story map of all the workforce and asked them to bring memories of things to do with food that are important to them. It might be a recipe that brings back memories of when they were a little kid or something. I thought, well, that's a nice idea that we could use in our food unit, but getting a bit more student involvement, getting that collaboration, which obviously the conference is about collaboration. This idea enables the students to collaborate their ideas and then actually look at what they produce. So what I'm going to do, the homework was a little homework task. The story map, the survey, 1, 2, 3. Created a survey 1, 2, 3. So you can do a Google form, you can do a survey 1, 2, 3. It's that simple. Add the name, the recipe, why it's important to them, so that ownership. They can add a little bit, and then they located it on a map. Now, I'm going to show you the results. The results. So this was a survey. This is how it's created. Quite easy to do. Not particularly difficult. It was pushed out. As Andy said, my students did not need a password for this. It was shared to everyone. And I set up the results in a story map. So they could actually look at all the results. And on the map, you can see each of these red dots is one of the stories from the students across the 3 or 4 classes that I teach in year 7. So if I click on this example here, this is Esther. She's in one of my year 7 classes currently, and it gave her an opportunity, and it gave lots of students an opportunity to take advantage of their experience. Birmingham, the school I work in, is very multicultural, and we want to embrace that. We wanted to get them on board early on in year 7 about what geography is. It isn't something that's nothing to it. They can take ownership. And she says what her meal is, and at the bottom she's even included a picture. Now the beauty of this is the students can look at this themselves. So if you look at this student, these one here, Malak, also in the same class, talks about why it's important to her. They can take ownership of it. It's important to them. And this student's actually even included the recipe. Now, what I find is really useful about this is, as a class, when we did it at home, I should have said, well, what can you see about patterns? So we've got that way in to do some of what the connections like. So in a class of year 7, we have got a range of student backgrounds, and we want to embrace that. We want to bring them together, but also from a geography like connections. Or why are there connections here? Why are they? Oh, I didn't know someone was from there. Oh, I didn't know there was another student in the school from that area who's got that background. So it's embracing them. But it's a way in. The GIS is a tool to enable. They don't know. They may not know it's GIS originally, initially, but then if you actually, they can see it. They can see, and then we can push that in this to the parents. We can put it on. If we want, we can push it out on school website as an example of actually how connected we are with students, and they can start to see that actually we all live in Birmingham, but actually we are international, have got that international connection. So here, GIS was a simple tool to enable collaboration, bring it together, and then do a little bit of analysis, visual, either from front of class, or they can actually do it themselves. I think this will work very easily in primary as well, not just secondary. So it's a way in to use a powerful tool to collaborate and bring together. And you've got an output that you can show. Yeah. Other examples you can see, we use it in other ways for holiday travel, food investigations, so even open data. Andy mentioned yesterday.
So have you got any questions from us? Thank you very much for coming to our session. And if anyone's got some bright ideas, there's a really simple and easy, and you want to use in your own classroom using GIS or simple GIS, or even more complicated, please come and see us. And we're always looking for new members if you're interested in joining us.
Can I just add to that? You go down to our stand by the entrance, isn't it? It's right by the main door. There's a QR code, and if you'd like to use that, that will take us to our Google site, which has got a load of extra resources, loads of links to a lot of these resources. Go and take the code and use it.
Yeah, we've got QR codes against lots of the resources that we've got there. So if there's any questions or any ideas you want to share with us.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you very much. All right.